Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Agnanatimirandasya Gnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharini. Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarini. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda. Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktabunda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama 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 Hare. Hare Krishna. So today we are discussing chapter 5 summary. Okay, so before we start, actually I found this interesting in Prabhupada Bhagavad Gita as it is contents. Prabhupada very nicely mentions the summary of a particular chapter. So here he's saying, so this chapter is entitled Karma Yoga, Action in Krishna Consciousness. And Prabhupada is saying outwardly performing all actions, but inwardly renouncing their fruits. The wise man, purified by the fire of transcendental knowledge, attains peace, detachment, forbearance, spiritual vision, and bliss. He's saying that. So third chapter is called Karma Yoga. Karma Yoga is mostly talking about the fact that everybody has to engage in some sort of activity, and then but we should know karma, vikarma, karma. And by acting for the pleasure of the Supreme without selfish motives, one can be liberated from the law of karma. So the focus is more on action and how we can get the reactions of work. But here it's taking one more step forward. How we might be performing actions, but inwardly we should renounce the fruits. And being situated and purified by the fire of transcendental knowledge. Transcendental knowledge that was given in chapter 4. Chapter 4 gave transcendental knowledge about the Supreme Lord and our relationship with Him. So one who is situated in that on that platform, knowing that we are servants of Krishna, he attains peace, detachment, forbearance, spiritual vision, and also bliss. So the idea, well, yeah, I mean, once somebody progresses makes significant progress in Krishna consciousness, there in the next chapter we'll discuss this yoga rudha, that such a person doesn't have any need to do any work. He's not obliged to do any work. But otherwise, we should be engaged in our respective duties based on varnashrama, and but inwardly we might be performing actions, but inwardly we should not be attached to the fruits. And by living like that, one can actually attain peace, detachment, forbearance, spiritual vision, and bliss. Okay. So now let's see the verses and try to see if we can correlate this. So these are the important verses from chapter 5. One who neither hates nor desires. Okay, one who neither hates nor desires the fruits of his activities is known to be always renounced. Such a person, free from all dualities, easily overcomes material bondage and is completely liberated. So this is what Prabhupada is mentioning in the chapter summary. So we should neither hate nor desire the fruits of activities. As in you become indifferent. You become indifferent to the fruits, which means if something good comes, it's fine. If something bad comes, that's also fine. Such a person is actually renounced. He doesn't have to be wearing clothes of a sannyasi. He's always renounced. And because he is not affected by hate or by good result or bad result, he is free from dualities. So this being free from dualities is a very important thing that we have to practice. I mean, we face with so many situations day in and day out where we are always either one on this side of duality or that side of duality. For example, either it's hot or it's cold, it's good, it's bad, it's white, it's black. Mm. So always we are on some side of duality, but we are stuck in the duality. Uh, Clean, unclean, happy, unhappy. uh, so it's like this. So, but one who works like this without expecting any results, whatever comes, it's okay. But his focus is just doing his duty. That's it. He becomes free from duality. So, which means that he's not affected by whether there is success, failure, happiness, sadness, heat, cold, etc. See here, Krishna is saying such a person easily overcomes material bondage. Actually, we are stuck in this material. What is material bondage? Material bondage is just being too attached, too affected by material things. That is material bondage. Or thinking, not thinking that I'm soul, thinking that I'm the body, and everything associated to the body is important, and being attached to those things. This is material bondage. One who is free from duality, that means that he sees that, I'm a spirit soul, but for unfortunate reasons, I'm here in this material world. I have a material body, but I am not this material body. So these dualities which are connected with the material body, hmm, I should not be affected by those dualities. So every situation, he looks at the situation and says, okay, this is not me. This is connected to the body. I am spirit soul. And my work is to be engaged in the service of Krishna. So he actually very easily overcomes material bondage because he's not affected by things around him. Actually, it just requires us to become conscious about this fact in our day-to-day dealings. Then we start to figure out that, okay, we are not affected, but we don't have to be affected by these things. Suppose somebody treated us disrespectfully. Uh, if we are in the material conception, then we think, oh, then we'll keep brooding over it. Oh, why did this person speak like this? What was the mistake? It was not my mistake, it was this person's mistake, this, that, and we are trying to substantiate, reason out why we are not wrong. So it's material bondage. We are getting more and more sucked into it. But a person who is in Krishna consciousness, he says, okay, this person is disrespectful. Okay, it's Krishna's will. It had to happen. It happened. And he just drops the thought. That's it. No further processing. I was realizing today morning that we unnecessarily think so much about every small little thing. We want to just keep thinking. No, at least I keep doing that. So I was thinking, saying that if I continue to keep thinking about material things, then how can I become free from material bondage? So the solution is to think about Krishna, which is to chant Hare Krishna. So whenever thoughts come to our mind and they're troubling us, or in fact not troubling, I mean, whether it is necessary or not necessary itself is a big question. Whether we spend mental energy over things, we have to know whether it is actually required or not. If it is not required, just drop it and chant Hare Krishna. So somebody who is free from dualities, that means he can see this, okay, saying this is just duality. It should not affect me. He will very easily overcome material bondage. Of course, it will take some time. It's a matter of practice. We have to keep applying it. Hmm. So then one can easily overcome material bondage and one can become completely liberated. Liberated means basically not living on the material platform. That's not very difficult, provided we stop expecting and we become free from dualities. This is a matter of practice which can happen once we are in Krishna consciousness. That means that we know that I am not this body, I'm spirit soul, I'm part and parcel of Krishna, I'm his servant, etc. Okay. 5.6. Merely renouncing all activities, yet not engaging in devotional service to the Lord cannot make one happy. Now, so many people talk about renunciation. That I'm going to give up this, I'm going to give up that, or I gave up everything. The idea is not just simply renunciation is of no use. Uh, we have to engage in devotional service. Otherwise, we cannot become happy. So Krishna is saying, but a thoughtful person engaged in devotional service can achieve the supreme without delay. So beautiful sentence this is. Thoughtful person. Thoughtful person means what? Mostly people are very blind. Blind means they don't think about what is happening, why it is happening, what did I do, why did I do. The word introspection is used. People don't introspect. You don't think. Simply just, however, go with the flow. No, but we should be thoughtful. We should become thoughtful and say, okay, am I behaving like a devotee? Am I still in the grips of material nature? How do I come out of it? Talk to other devotees, senior devotees, get their inputs, and then consistently make the effort, to kind of transcend the modes. So such a person who is and parallelly engaged in devotional service, he can achieve the supreme without delay. So the key to achieving the Supreme Lord is not renunciation. The key to achieving the Supreme Lord is devotional service. And of course, Bhagavatam also says once somebody is engaged in devotional service, renunciation comes automatically. We automatically become disconnected or disinterested with material things because we know that it's temporary, it's of no use. It really doesn't give us any benefit. Things like eating outside food, we know that it is just for taste and it binds us because food that is not offered to Krishna is sinful. So we understand, okay, then why should I engage in this? Because thoughtful person is thinking, okay, why should I engage in this? It's not going to give me any real benefit. So by thinking like this about every aspect in our life, we realize that there is nothing else but to surrender to Krishna, to serve him with love and affection. And once we engage in that way, we can very easily achieve the supreme without delay, Krishna is saying. So sometimes people say, oh, it's so difficult. I mean, Bhagavatam also says, even the yogis cannot reach, who are sitting and doing meditation on the Lord for thousands of years, they cannot achieve the supreme. But Bhakti Yoga process is the most easiest. There's no comparison to other yoga uh, paths. Bhakti Yoga is the easiest. So even in one life, Prabhupada said, even in this life, with whatever time we have, we can achieve perfection. We can achieve the supreme. But that is a key, that we just remain as Krishna conscious as possible in all situations. This is very nice. 5.7. One who works in devotion, who is a pure soul and who controls his mind and senses, is dear to everyone. The key here is one, we are engaged in doing devotion. As we do chanting and other practices, we become purified of all material contamination. And to the extent that we are purified, to that extent we can control our mind and senses. And one who is nicely controls his mind and senses, he is dear to everyone because in every situation, he is happy. He is happy with whatever Krishna has given. So, yeah, and he will always nicely engage with other people. It's not like, he's frustrated, so he's angry, he's putting out his frustration on other people, or, he's moody or whatever, right? So he's complete control over his mind and senses, and he becomes dear to everyone. Everyone likes him, likes that devotee. And along with that, everyone becomes dear to him. So he looks at everyone and say, okay, everyone should become Krishna conscious, not just people whom we know, even people on the street. Hmm? So such a person is always working. Is always working for what? For bringing people into Krishna consciousness. Such a man is never entangled, even though it might look like he's engaging all kinds of activities. He's going here, there, running around. But he's a pure soul, which means that he doesn't have any intention to um, become happy independent of Krishna. He's not doing all this for his sense gratification because he's pure. So he will never get entangled. And more importantly, like when Srila Prabhupada, people used to look at Srila Prabhupada, I mean, his disciples, and I used to say, we cannot express in words how we used to feel love for Srila Prabhupada. Because he was a pure devotee, automatically devotees got attracted to him, others got attracted to him. Hmm? So we will know if we are making progress when others want to, come and talk to us, and so then we can understand that, okay, we are making some progress. So there's a little bit of purity, so others want to associate with us. A person in the divine consciousness, although engaged in seeing, hearing, touching, smelling, eating, moving about, sleeping, and breathing, all kinds of activities. So, a person who is in divine consciousness, although is engaged in all this, because these are all required to maintain body and soul together. One has to see, hear, touch, smell, eat, move about, sleep, breathe, etc. He always knows within himself that he actually does nothing at all, because he knows, I am the spirit soul. All these activities that are happening is with respect to the body. So he sees that I am not doing anything. It's just the body. Because while sleeping, evacuating, receiving, or opening or closing his eyes, he always knows that only the material senses are engaged with their objects, and that he is aloof from them. Hmm? You look at this and say that uh, it's only the material senses, it's only this body which is engaged with its objects. And why the body is engaged with its objects? Mostly it is because of our past karma. So he doesn't get engaged, involved at all. He just leaves it. Oh, okay, fine. This is this I, and he doesn't get. Uh, he actually he does nothing. As in, he's not involved in that action. He's not involved in the action. So, for example, suppose if we're eating, he's not involved in that eating process. Meaning, he's not trying to enjoy his senses, and he just knows, okay, I have to eat, okay, and anyway I'm eating prasadam, so it's mercy of the Lord. But why am I eating? Just to keep the body healthy so that I can practice Krishna consciousness. That's it. He's sleeping, okay, I have to just sleep enough so that I can keep my body, give enough rest, keep my body healthy. Like this. So he doesn't get involved. He doesn't get involved, right? So it's just knows that, okay, these things have to happen. They're happening, but I am not engaged. I'm not involved here. As in, I'm not doing any of this. The yogi is abandoning attachment, act with body, mind, and intelligence, and even with senses only for the purpose of purification. So this is very important. So if you want to become a bhakti yogi, then first is we have to abandon attachment. We have to give up all kinds of attachment, and then we should act with mind, body, intelligence, and even with the senses. So any action that we do should be only for the purpose of purification. That means that any action that we do should purify us of this conception that we are this body, and take us closer to Krishna. That is the goal of every action. There is no other reason why we should be doing anything with mind, body, or intelligence. So, which means even the thoughts that are coming into the mind, if it is not for the purpose of purification, if it is for the purpose of binding us more, then we don't have to think about it. Hmm? Example, like, okay, we are just very worried. Okay, am I going to get promotion, or am my salary increase, this, that, and all that? No, this is purely material. No, we know that, it's based on past karma, or if Krishna desires, he might put me in some situation which will help me progress in bhakti. Now, when this thought comes, this is not for purification. This is for it binds us further in this material world. This kind of thoughts, material thoughts. So we should not engage in those thoughts. See, if we practice this, and when I'm saying this, it's not like it's not like I'm able to do that 100%, but at least the consciousness is there that, okay, these thoughts are useless. It's not going to be of any help. So whatever we do should be only for the purpose of purification. Very powerful words. So we should evaluate any action that we are doing. Okay, is it purifying me? Is it binding me? Is it binding me? Then drop it. No use. Purifying me, involved. Get involved. Hmm? And ask me if you have any questions in the mind. Okay. 12. The steadily devoted soul attains unadulterated peace. Steadily devoted. So he's steadily devoted in, whatever we discussed in the previous slide, right? So he's not attached to the fruits. Then um, um, he is always working for the welfare of others. Completely his mind and senses are controlled. He's acting only for the purpose of intention of purification, and he's engaged in devotional service. So he's steady in his practice. And this is called Nishta. And he's steadily engaged in his devotion. He attains unadulterated peace because he offers the results of all activities to me. See, peace, we don't have peace of mind because we are worried about the result. Oh, I'm doing this. What if this happens? What if that happens? What if something else happens? No, but this person, he's so steadily engaged in devotional service that he's really not, I mean, he doesn't bother about the results. He just offers the results to Krishna. Meaning, Krishna, okay, it's up to you. Hmm? So there is no reason for him to be worried. He attains unadulterated means pure peace. Whereas a person who is not in union with the divine, who is greedy for the fruits of his labor, becomes entangled. So the key here is that person is not in union with the divine. That means that he doesn't understand that I am Krishna's servant. My job is to serve Krishna. I have to please him. This is my goal. He doesn't think that way. And he just thinks, okay, I have to achieve more and more. I put so much of effort. I should get this. I should get that. He's greedy for for results also. He becomes entangled. But the steadily devoted soul, he becomes fully peaceful. So in this only we can understand, if we are intelligent, we can understand what kind of activities we should be engaged in. What is the point in being engaged in activities which are going to bind us, which are going to entangle us? No use. No use. So the embodied spirit, meaning the spirit, meaning the Atma, which has got embodied, which means that which has got a body. So the Atma which has got a body, he is the master of the city of his body. So the body is being compared to a city. He is the master of his body. He does not create activities, nor does he induce people to act, nor does he create the fruits of action. All this is enacted by the modes of material nature. So this is another very important thing. Anything, any material activity that is happening is all carried out by the modes of nature, by the modes that we have acquired. And On what basis have we acquired our modes? Based on our previous karma. So everything that we are doing, except devotional service, everything that we are doing on the material platform is all enacted by the modes. Even devotional service initially till it becomes pure is enacted by the modes. So for example, if you are in goodness, then we will do devotional service in goodness. If you are in the mode of passion, we'll do devotional service in the mode of passion. In the initial stages, when we become purified, then we transcend these modes. Then it is not on the material platform, but otherwise everything that is being done is done by the modes. Meaning, what does that mean? The modes, it's like we say, it is a nature of a person, right? So our thinking, feeling, willing, everything is controlled by the mode. So for example, assume say somebody is a very cruel person, very, hard-hearted, very curt, always wants to hurt others. No, every action he does, it will be like this only. Because his whole thinking, feeling, willing, everything is controlled, driven by these modes. And that is tamoguna and rajoguna combined. So he will keep acting in that way, everything that he does. So we can easily understand, oh, okay, this is this kind of a person. So the soul is not doing this, because the soul, what the soul does, the soul only desires. The soul desires using the free will. So if the soul properly uses the free will, then it will say, okay, I want to serve Krishna. If the soul misuses the free will, then it will say, I want to serve myself, or I want to serve my family. And it just is, okay, I want to go somewhere. Desire. Either you might say, I want to go to the temple, or I might say, I might want to go to a movie. No, but he doesn't actually, the soul doesn't do the action. The soul just desires. Then, intelligence, mind, etc., everything will carry it out. Senses. So that is why it's very important for us to be clear what we want to desire, what we desire. If we desire material things, then we will be materially bound. If we desire spiritual things, then we will become liberated. But everything is being carried out by the modes of nature, which is basically the gross and subtle body and the nature they have acquired. Like I explained, somebody might be very rude, somebody might be very soft, somebody might be always busy. This is their mode. This is their way of behaving, their nature. But the spirit soul is actually not engaged. It's just desiring, that's it. Everything else the machine carries out. Body, which is the machine, carries it out. Okay. And many a times when we have problems, I've seen people saying, oh, why did God do this? Oh, why, so much of trouble? Why is God giving so much of trouble to this person? So that is why in the next verse, Krishna says, not as a Supreme Lord assume anyone's sinful or pious activities. Nadatte kasichit papam na chaiva sukritam vibhu. I am not responsible for anyone's sinful or pious activities. Actually, they are only doing it. Embodied beings, bewildered because of the ignorance which covers their real knowledge. So they don't understand what is real knowledge, that they are responsible for their own actions because of the ignorance. But they are only responsible for their sinful and pious activities. So sinful activities result in suffering. So which means that we ourselves are responsible for suffering. We ourselves are responsible for our happiness. We can't make Supreme Lord responsible for it. But of course, without his sanction, nothing will happen. So in some sense, he's giving the facility for us to do that. But we ourselves are responsible. So if we are in some suffering, we don't go and blame the Lord. Oh, Krishna, why did you do this? I'm sorry, Krishna has not done anything. We have only done it. We've desired something, and then our whole gross and subtle body is material nature got, has performed the action, and sometime in the past, and whether that was good karma or bad karma, according to that we've got suffering or happiness. So we should not, drag the Supreme Lord into this. It's our own doing. Hmm. So in this chapter, completely, the whole chapter is about what should be the consciousness in which we should live. It is so beautiful, actually, if you see the topic. He's saying, spirit soul is just desiring, so change the nature of desire. Any action that we do should be only for purification. We are responsible for our own actions, nobody else is. Hmm. We should control our mind and senses. And for all this, it is not possible unless we engage in devotional service. Very beautiful. When one's intelligence, mind, faith, and refuge are all fixed in the Supreme, then one becomes fully cleansed of misgivings, are all fixed in the Supreme. Refuge means shelter. So, which means that our intelligence, our mind, our faith, which means that we have full faith in Krishna and we have taken full shelter of Krishna. Then one becomes fully cleansed of misgivings. Misgivings means wrong understandings. How? Through complete knowledge. We have complete knowledge. Okay, I'm soul, I'm part and parcel of Krishna, I'm servant of Krishna, I have to serve Krishna, I'm here. I have a material body because of because I wanted to enjoy independent of Krishna. I'm suffering because of some wrong action that I've done in the past. I'm happy because of some good action I've done in the past. Completely understand the position. So then, oh, okay, all of this is because I try to enjoy. Now let me just try to serve. And so then he does proceed straight on the path of liberation. So he is not, he's very clear now. Okay, I'm fixed. I'm very clear. This is my role. I'm a servant. I have to just please Krishna. No question of sense gratification. So I'm going to just be determined and do this in all situations. So he's all in the path of liberation. Now it's just a matter of how fast, how serious, but he's on the path. And when we look at people around us, they are possibly on the path down to hell. We actually don't seem to understand, our fortunate position. Sometimes devotees take, they don't take their position in Krishna consciousness very seriously. In fact, sometimes they look at it saying, oh, so much of difficulty, so much of don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. But actually, it is so, it's so fortunate. We are on the right path. We can face difficulties whether in jail or not in jail, as in whether we want to act in such a way that we get drawn to hell or we get drawn towards the Lord. Both scenarios, there is difficulty, but it's better to take the difficulty which takes us towards Krishna. No, at least the result is good. Outcome is best. Hmm. So again, what is the consciousness of this humble sage who is striving hard to remain in devotional service? By virtue of true knowledge, he sees with equal vision a learned and gentle Brahmana, cow, an elephant, dog eater, etc. So which means he sees everybody as part and parcel of Krishna. He sees every living entity as a temple of Krishna because the Paramatma is residing in every body. So he respects every living entity. Now, when he say respects every living entity, but the body also is an indication of how we should engage with somebody. For example, if there is a snake, it's not like we are going to have like friendly relationship with the snake. As in, the snake is generally envious. It will cause harm, even if we don't do any harm to it. We have to deal with it accordingly. But we respect it. We respect it, saying that okay, it's a jiva. Unfortunately, taken a very low birth of complete envy and anger, mode of ignorance. But then, okay, because it is taken the body of mode of ignorance, we have to be careful because it can cause harm. Doesn't mean that we go and hug, a tiger, saying, "Oh, it is part and parcel of Krishna." No, but We know that, okay, this living entity is also part and parcel of Krishna, but it has taken this body because of whatever reasons. And if we can help that soul progress towards Krishna, we should do. Otherwise, we deal with it at the body level in appropriate way. Hmm. But we should see that there is, so this respect, actually, especially with human beings, right? When we look at different types of human beings, when we engage with different kinds of human beings, we should recognize that there is Supreme Lord, there's Paramatma in every living entity, and we should respect all of them. And Shastra says that, those who are uh, inferior to us, we should feel compassionate towards them, saying, they're not engaged in the service of Krishna. How can I help them so that they can engage in the service of Krishna? Then when we meet souls who are, better than us, then we serve them. Krishna, sorry. We serve them, we associate with them, we learn from them. And with peers, we remain as friends, right? We deal with them as equals. Bhagavatam says that if we can actually deal with people in this way, then we will not have any hard, bad, difficult relationships, difficulty dealing with people. Because better people, we will always be respectful of them and accept whatever they say. Inferior people, we feel compassionate to them, so we don't become angry with them. Hmm. Somebody is saying bad things at us, I say, okay, he's in ignorance. So when somebody is in ignorance, we don't become too affected by that. We feel compassionate. Oh, he's behaving, he or she is behaving like this because not in mode of ignorance. I should help him or her to come to the platform of devotional service. So compassionate and equals with friendship. So then we will never be affected by anybody badly in a negative way. So this is also again a matter of practice. Every relationship, every day. See, actually, if you study these verses, we can mold our how we deal with things, situations, people, etc., in such a way that we can actually attain peace. It's very beautiful, these verses. Those whose minds are established in sameness and equanimity. This is sameness and equanimity. Uh, Sameness meaning all of us are part and parcel of Krishna. So I should be equal to everybody. He's already conquered the conditions of birth and death. So if suppose say we are able to be equipoised irrespective of what situation around us, we've already liberated. We're already liberated. Consistently. Consistently, if we remain like that, free from dualities, equipoised, irrespective whether we're happy, sad, whether it's good outcome, bad outcome, whether somebody dear to us is healthy, not healthy, it doesn't matter. If we remain equipoised, always knowing, okay, it's in Krishna's hands. I will leave it to him. I will try my best and then leave it to Krishna. Not getting the least affected. Such a person has already conquered birth and death. That means that we are liberated. We won't come back to this material world again. And this is possible only for devotees. Very easily possible for devotees because we depend on Krishna. And such a person, such souls, they are flawless. They're flawless because they are not reacting to any situation. They just take everything as Lord's mercy, completely dependent on the Lord, pure in their consciousness, uh, not wanting sense gratification, knowing that we are servants of Krishna. So they're flawless. There is no, I mean, flawless means it's not like they will not do any mistake at all, but it's irrelevant. It's irrelevant because in the bigger scheme of things, they have figured it out. So they're already situated in Brahman. See, this is Mukti. People talk about Mukti. This is Mukti. Mukti means that just that we raise above the material platform, which means that we stop engaging. So this is very important. Maybe we should just focus on these points I'm going to say now. we should stop engaging in unnecessary material thought process. Okay, as much as possible, engage our mind in Krishna consciousness, in thinking about Krishna and acting, serving Him. Hmm? And whenever there are situations, we understand that it is all because of our past karma phala, and Krishna is so merciful. He is not. He is giving me only little, and just accept it, equipoised. If we just live like this, then we've reached Brahman. We've got liberation. Seems so easy. It's just a matter of focus and practice. And that is the reason why we have to chant Hare Krishna. See, the idea of chanting Hare Krishna is to focus on the name of Krishna, names of Krishna. When the mind is engaged in some material activity, we pull it away from that material activity, unwanted material activity, unwanted thinking activity, and we engage that mind in chanting, in hearing Krishna's name. So we are cutting out that unnecessary material thought process, which will bind us. So the more and more we are chanting Hare Krishna, we don't. It's not that our chanting on beads is only the mandatory rounds that we are chanting. Minimum 16 rounds. But above that, if we have time to chant on beads, it's very nice. Otherwise, chanting should keep going on. Whether we are cooking, whether we are taking bath, whether we are going to the market, whatever we are doing, we simply always just keep chanting. Okay, and if we are continuously just chanting, then our mind doesn't come down to the material platform. So this is very nice. We actually become liberated if we live like this. The person who neither rejoices upon achieving something pleasant nor laments upon obtaining something unpleasant, who is self-intelligent. Self-intelligent means he knows what is right, what is wrong. He is unbewildered, who knows the signs of God. He's already situated in transcendence. So we already situated in transcendence. We are liberated. We are situated in Brahman. So we should just practice this, day in and day out. We are faced with so many situations, material situations. We should practice these verses. See, that is why the Krishna says that Bhagavad Gita is Gnana Vignanam. Gnanam Vignanam Saitam. So it's not just knowledge. Knowledge which we cannot apply in our life is useless. It's of no use. Example, we know that if you put our hand into fire, it's going to burn. That is knowledge. But if I don't apply that knowledge and still go put my hand into fire, it is stupidity. Then that knowledge became useless. It was of no use to me. But Bhagavad Gita is about practical application. So how should we read Bhagavad Gita? We should read Bhagavad Gita. We should make notes. Now, these are verses that I have noted for personal application. So which means that, of course, it's not that these are the only important verses. There is no unimportant verse in Bhagavad Gita, but this is for practical application, especially for grihasthas, because I'm a grihastha. So I made these points more from personal application of people who are engaged in worldly life. Brahmacharis might be looking at Bhagavad Gita very different, in the sense some things might be more relevant to them than it is for us, right? So we are learning how to deal with this world by reading Bhagavad Gita. And if we live as per Krishna's instructions in Bhagavad Gita, then we very easily become liberated. I mean, liberation is not a big deal at all for devotees. Actually, Bhagavatam says, or Padma Purana, I think, wherein it says like moksha is just waiting like a maid servant, saying, I'm here. Devotee saying, no, I'm not interested in moksha. I'm interested in serving Krishna. So moksha is nothing, very easily achieved. An intelligent person does not take part in the sources of misery. See, what a beautiful statement. He does not take part in the sources of misery. So what are the sources of misery? These in material senses, these material objects. the attraction towards the world, material world around us. It's a source of misery because we inevitably end up doing wrong things and we will suffer because of that. So intelligent person, he does not take part. He doesn't engage himself in this. They're saying source of misery which are due to contact with material sense. So son of Kunti, such pleasures have a beginning and an end. So Krishna specifically here is talking about material pleasures, that actions that we do for material pleasures, because they have a beginning and an end, and because they are sources of misery. So the wise man does not delight in them, which means that he's not like, he does not become happy by engaging in activities for material sense pleasure, because he's intelligent. He knows it's of no use. It's going to give me only suffering. Why should I engage in this? But mostly people are very happy engaging in activities which give them material pleasure. Oh, tomorrow we are going out for dinner. Oh, we are going out to this place. Oh, we are going out to that place. So much of pleasure in that for them. But unfortunately, they're not able to understand that this is going to, first of all, that pleasure has a beginning and an end, and it is source of misery. It is going to create future suffering for me. See, in previous yugas, these issues were not there because people were all living as per Varnashrama, and they were hardly engaging in Vikarma, non forbidden activities. But Kali Yuga is full of forbidden actions. All the time we are engaged in actions that we should not be engaged in because we don't even know. So, an intelligent person, after he comes, reads Bhagavad Gita, he knows, oh, this is not good for me. Okay, let me not engage in this. I keep giving this example. Somebody likes Gobi Manchurian. They eat Gobi Manchurian so that tomorrow in the future they can suffer. It's so simple. Yeah, it's so tasty, this, that, and all that, but it's onion, garlic, non-offered, sinful food, which is going to result in suffering, apart from giving us acidity in this life. So this is very beautiful. Before giving up this present body, if one is able to tolerate the urges of the material senses and check the force of desire and anger, he is well situated and happy. So this is the way to be happy in this world. When we are engaged in devotional service, we tolerate the urges of the material senses. Okay, this is there, but I know this is not good. This has a beginning and an end, and it is going to be the cause of misery. So I will tolerate it. Urges come because, see, this is called vasana. It is coming from some past activities, from past desires. It's not very easy to keep them at bay. I mean, they will attack us, but an intelligent person will tolerate. Oh, it's okay. It's okay. Okay, it is coming back again and again. It's okay. Let me take shelter of Supreme Lord. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Or check the force of desire and anger. Oh, I want this, I want that. Oh, I didn't get this. Frustrated, I'm angry. So if we can tolerate all these kind of situations, thoughts, because of being materially attached, then we can be very easily be happy in this world. And of course, next life, there is no question at all, because we will not be in this material world and we will go to the spiritual world, and then there's no question of unhappiness. Hmm. So beautifully Krishna is explaining. Those who are beyond the dualities that arise from doubts, beyond dualities that arise from doubts, oh, should I do this? Should I do that? We are beyond that. Whose minds are engaged within. Engaged within meaning engaged in devotional service. Always busily working for the welfare of all living beings, not for our sense gratification. We working for the welfare of all living beings, who are free from all sins, because devotees will not engage in sins. They achieve liberation in the Supreme. So liberation is not a big deal. And those who are free from anger and all material desires, who are self-realized, self-disciplined, and constantly endeavoring for perfection. So this is very, very important. Uh, Sometimes devotees are engaged, 1 hour in a day, 1.5 hours in a day for perfection, which is chanting Hare Krishna. Rest of the day, they are not they've somewhat lost their Krishna consciousness. They become engaged in material consciousness. No, we should constantly endeavor for perfection, which means that every action that we do, every thought that comes in our mind, we should keep thinking, okay, is it taking me towards Krishna, away from Krishna? If it is taking me away from Krishna, don't want. I don't need this. So if somebody endeavors like that constantly, he's assured of liberation in the Supreme in the very near future. Like we already discussed this. Very quickly we will achieve liberation. Not a big deal. And this last verse of fifth chapter is called as the peace formula. Person in full consciousness of me, knowing me to be the ultimate beneficiary of all sacrifices and austerities, full consciousness of me. Okay, what is the consciousness of Krishna? He's a supreme Lord. He's in control of everything. He's our master. We are his servants. So this is full consciousness, and he's in complete control of everything, every situation at all times. Knowing him to be the ultimate beneficiary of all sacrifices and austerities. So whatever sacrifices we do, whatever austerities we are involved in, everything is for his pleasure, and that he is the supreme Lord of all planets and demigods. And most importantly, he is our benefactor and well-wisher. We should never forget, even in spite of whatever difficult situation we are in, we should understand Krishna is going to help us, because we are trying to serve him sincerely. We are not serving him with saying Krishna, like we do when we go. Of course, before coming to Krishna consciousness, I've also done that. Go to Tirupati, put 100 rupees, and say, Govinda, give me this, give me that, give me something else. Not like that. Purely for his pleasure. If you are engaged in service, then he will become our benefactor. He will take care of us. He will become our well-wisher. So one who knows this, he attains peace from pangs of material miseries. Meaning, even if there are troubles from material miseries, he is peaceful, saying, okay, I am suffering, but that is because of my past karma. But Krishna is there. He's my benefactor. He's my well-wisher. He will take care of things. He will show me the direction. And without free from dualities, not feeling low, not feeling high, you know, constantly just continuously endeavor for perfection, then we are done. We will not only be happy in this world, we will also achieve perfection. We'll go back to the spiritual world at the end of this life. Hmm. So beautiful. This is actually these verses of Bhagavad Gita are just amazing. Every time, every time I read these, or it just, it's for, it gives us direction, it gives us peace of mind, it gives us somewhat happiness. We feel protected by Krishna's instructions at all times. So it's very important that we read Bhagavad Gita nicely, and try to implement that in our life. Okay, so this is the end of fifth chapter. If anybody has any questions, we can discuss.
True, I have a question. In the 5.25, those who are beyond the
Yeah,
dualities that arise from doubts. So, how to understand this, that dualities arise from doubt?
dualities arise from doubts means um, okay. So sometimes we are thinking, okay, should I do this? Should I do that? That's a duality, right? Now, why are we thinking, should I do this? Should I do that? Because I'm not in perfect knowledge. So the duality will be, oh, on one side we are feeling comfortable, on the other side we are feeling uh, anxious. These are dualities. Or
Yeah,
should I worship Krishna? Should I worship somebody else? Or should I do this? Should I follow that path? Internet, there are so many people who are talking about this. Doubt. There can be doubt about anything. Whenever there's a doubt, we get stuck in the dualities that arise from doubt, because with every doubt there are dualities. There's always, should I do this? Should I do that? Should I? That is why we should surrender to the Supreme Lord, surrender to his devotees, and simply just take guidance from them and just close our eyes and do it. Hmm. Of course, if we are completely fully fixed in Krishna, Krishna himself will give us direction from within as Paramatma. But if there is too much of noise inside, normally if there's too much of noise inside, our mind is like full of thoughts. So though Paramatma is speaking, we cannot really hear. Our noise is only so much. So in that case, we go and approach some other person saying that, okay, I'm stuck in this doubt. What should I do? And of course, you should go to a reliable person who is authentic, etc. And then he will clear our doubts. So then we go beyond the doubts.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else? I hope everybody, because I think Prabhu has been, been associated with all this for some time. Other devotees, I don't know. I mean, I just want to know if are things clear? Is this summary too complex to understand, or is it helping in some way for you to be able to read and understand Bhagavad Gita better? Any inputs? No inputs. Okay. Then I don't know. I mean, then I just continue whatever I'm doing, hoping and thinking that it's useful. Okay, then we'll stop here. I don't know why we are